Attention, citizens. It's time for Super Pulp Science.
This is Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. I am GMB Kamichuk. I am here with my long-suffering co-host, Justin Curry, known the world over as Chasing Artwork, and Dan Vadeboncoeur, our producer extraordinaire. I was going to give you another epithet there about a man who does not like Fury Road, but I decided to leave our previous conversation.
I didn't say I did not like it. I just don't love it, is all he said. That's all he said.
This is not a podcast about George Miller's filmography. This is, in fact, about making things and putting them out in the world.
We could talk about Happy Feet for a bit.
We could.
Love that movie.
We all are shoeless in the studio today. We have Happy Feet. I want to address something. I've gotten a fair amount of feedback from friends and family who listened to a previous episode, Dan, that we posted up about my head being full of angry squirrels. Yeah. And a lot of people that said, wow, you guys were so human on that episode. And so thanks for listening, dear listeners, and thanks for the feedback. And I will also say that the moment of crisis has passed.
Oh, good.
The draft
What a
is
relief.
safe. Yes. And I think it's important to say that one of the ways in which I conquered that demon was in sharing that conversation as openly as I did. That was a new thing for us on the show, is to talk about the foibles of creation. And I felt like I could see what was wrong with my process afterwards, once it was out, and went back into the draft, just rolled up my sleeves and got to work after that. I kind of was able to express it. So one of the things that I usually don't think I need is a place to complain about things. It's not part of my general process, is how I do it. But in that case, it really helped. And so if it helps you, dear listener, find a group of people who will listen to your griping and belly aching and fears and put them over there and then look at them.
Yeah, problems are a lot bigger in your head than they are in the real world,
That's
right? It's always worse in your mind palace than when you actually get to it. It's kind of like when like memory is different when you're thinking it versus when you say it.
Absolutely. And so this is what I was going to say about that. When in that recording, I didn't go back and listen to the episode yet, but the act of describing to you what I was trying to accomplish that wasn't working ordered it in my mind in such a way that when I went back to the draft, I knew exactly what I was trying to accomplish, and it made the edit much better.
Oh, cool.
So I guess if there's a learning curve there, express what you're trying to do to a bunch of people who don't know the project. You have to set aside all your assumptions, right? All of the knowledge, all the backstory, all of those things. When I had to basically slug line my own story in order to explain to you what I was trying to accomplish, it really ordered it in my head, and I realized, all those parts that I didn't tell them about, I probably don't need at all, because they weren't important to explain what I was trying to accomplish. And that's what I did. I went back and I just, I always make a copy of the thing I'm about to make a big change on. So I copy it over, and then I go into the fresh facsimile and just start chopping away.
Isn't it funny? You always do that, right? You save like version 2 before you make big changes on version 3, thinking that like if I screw up, I can always go back. But you never go back.
You know what that is from? Just to interrupt, it's from the generation of saving your game in case you die. That's we grew up in Nintendo, and you save your game in case you die, and then you have to go back. That's what we did.
Computers in general. Computers crash. Like you know, even a couple of years ago, it was more of a problem than it is today. But things crash.
But I will say, in prose writing, those old files do become useful, because if, say, something's 50,000 words and then your new version is only 35,000, you know that there's 15,000 words floating around that might be of use in another book in the series, or another, like sometimes you write in a direction that is not necessary for your story but is necessary for the world, and you may trod those paths again later. So why describe the old bookstore again? Why not go look for how
do you find that 15,000 words though? Do you,
I usually, so for example, I literally just did this. I knew that I had a description and that's why I bring up an old bookstore, of this old bookstore that I'd done in an old draft.
Oh, okay.
And I just typed the words old bookstore into the search function on my laptop, and it brought up every file that contained old bookstore.
Okay.
And then I was like, oh yeah, it's that one. And then I opened it and then search within that, use the find function to find the place where the description is. Take that 1,500 words, drop it into my new draft as a starting place, and move from there.
Okay, makes sense.
Right.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it's like Chadwick Ginther recently was in the studio talking about how that is. He has like a limbo file where all the stuff that didn't end up in a good draft, but he knows the writing is strong enough to be used somewhere, he puts in this limbo draft. I don't know if that's what he actually names the file if you're hacking his computer, but that was the way he conceptualized it. So
it's a little bit like the sketchbook, right? We have a ton of half-finished ideas that maybe aren't ready to go yet, but you'll come back to later and like, oh, I know what to do with that now.
Yeah, nascent.
There was something there that I wasn't ready for, or it wasn't the right time, and then,
yeah. So, dear listener, thank you for your feedback on that last episode. The functional experience that I can share is that explaining it to people who don't know what the problem is lets you order it in your own mind in a way that maybe you tell yourself all that you need, right? And then move from there. So, which brings us around to something that does. So, dear listener, Dan, every now and then, you don't know this, but he uses what we call the dad voice on us once in a while, off the air. And it's the way that a good dad voice lovingly scolds your lack of preparedness, right? And those of you who maybe didn't have a good dad, just imagine that the criticism is actually constructive instead of just straight criticism, right? This is what we're talking about when we talk about the dad voice for Dan. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing where we're like, oh, we have to rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that you often say is, if you have a clear idea of what you're going to talk about, you can point at it, and maybe you should even make a plan. And today, on this sticky note, Dan,
the sticky note I noticed it on the table actually as I was setting up. I'm like, I wonder if that's our plan for today.
This is the plan for today.
Of like a handful of P words on a Post-it note.
That's right. This episode's got P all over it. Sometimes when the pressure builds, you just have to let it go. So these are the headings we wrote down on this little sticky note, dear listener. Putter, plans, projects, and parts. They had other words, but we brainstormed all the P words that were associated with it. And this is how we have been talking about, frankly, the unmanageable number of projects and things that we have on the go in the studio, and how individually we have been processing how to do it. And when we were codifying it, we realized that you putter once in a while. You come into the studio for a couple hours and you putter. You don't know what you're going to work on yet. You're just puttering, pulling something out of an old sketchbook, looking at an old draft of something, getting a bunch of pages of stuff you hadn't quite figured out, maybe some half-finished, half-baked ideas you put them. You're just puttering. Then you come up with a plan, which is like a broad idea, right? We're going to publish a book. We're going to clean the storage room. We're going to invade America. Whatever it is, you have a big idea, right? And the plan is where the excitement comes in. At the broad view, I find I get the most excited about plans.
Because you don't have to worry about any of the individual parts of it. It's just overall, this is the plan.
This is the plan.
We're going to make a book. Let's keep it with a book.
Yeah, so we're going to make a book.
We're going to make a book. That is the plan.
The plan is the plan. And it's going to come out in summer next year. That's the plan. And it's going to be good. That's the plan. And people are going to like it. That's the plan. And it's going to be about all these things that we like putting in it.
It's going to light the world on fire.
Right?
It's going to be great.
None of those are actionable, except for the fact that now you have to start.
But, Mother, I don't want to grow up. Now, dear, don't worry about it any more tonight.
He called Peter Pan absolute poppycock.
The act of starting goes on the board over there, which is our project board, right? And that we put on a little cue card with the title of it and like some of the parts of that
This is where we talk about anchor images a lot on the podcast, where you'll just get a night. So puttering, I like the word putter. Putter is when you don't have a particular task in mind, right? Like I've got a couple hours to explore some ideas. I'm going to thumbnail out some posters. I'm going to like think about some story ideas. I don't have like a, in this hour you need to do this, this, and this. It's like, just be creative for creative sake. Let's see what happens. So I think it's like the play part of our job, and I think it's really, really important to have
great
that
P word.
Play and putter.
Why is it important to play and putter?
Because you can't plan all this stuff. You can't jump into. You have to blue sky it. It's the blue sky part of our job where the
have another P word.
Purple sky.
No, because so here's one of the reasons why I think plans are important, and why a big plan is easy to get excited about, and why it's important to putter about the plan. Oh, Justin, dear listener, I was distracted because he was pointing at a very sharp object right in front of me that our studio helper Signe is using to slice open Justin's art books. Available at a link in his store, chasingartwork.com. So, I forgot what I was talking about.
Okay. All right, I'll cut it. Yeah.
Oh, no, I know what it was. Okay. Big ideas, right, in your plan. Allow your brain to do that other thing that I think, not only that I think, I know from clinical research, is in fact true. We are pattern machines. And your brain will begin to make organized patterns of certain amounts of information. Your puttering forms a pattern in your head, which creates a plan. You don't know how to carry it out necessarily yet. You just know that this is related to this, and this is related to this. And in creative ways, it could be this line of dialogue is definitely in there. This scene on the mountainscape is definitely in there. This series of plot actions is definitely in there.
That's where I was going. Now I remember. It was about the...
we just had to putter for a bit.
Yeah, you had to putter for a bit. The anchor image, right? That's what happens during the puttering phase. That's our blue sky, like, what about this? What about that? That's where that image comes from in the story that kind of anchors the whole idea around. And we both did a book called Cassie and Tonk, where it came from just a doodle of a big robot holding an umbrella for a little girl in the rain. And we didn't know what happened before or after. We didn't know anything about the world, but like there was a lot of like emotion and excitement revolved around that one scene.
This is in it. No matter what happens, this is going to happen.
Yeah, so I want to make a story, and I want these characters in. I want a big robot, and I want a little girl, and they go on an adventure. That's the plan. I don't know anything else, but that's the plan. And that comes from puttering. Yeah,
and so we puttered around on that plan for a little while, and then it became a project. And once it had a name, Cassie and Tonk is a good one to walk through in this way because we were collaborating on it, and that's an important part of...
partnering on it? Were you partnering on?
Yeah,
partnering on the plan.
Yeah. Can I ask, is that, so the reason, before we move on to the next one, for the puttering part of it, this is going to be so many pot peas in this episode, it's not going to be fun.
A podcast full of peas.
Is it because when you I know people who will make a list of things to do in other fields, a list of things, tasks to do, and then we'll just go, okay, 1, 2, 3, and they'll check off their things. But sometimes those things are difficult to kind of just come up with, because it's like when you're asking somebody, okay, be creative. They're not just going to turn it on and go, think of a character in a story right now. I mean, we've done that on the podcast.
That's your task list. That's the parts. You're skipping ahead to parts.
But the puttering, but the puttering is like, it feels like procrastinating, another P word there.
So
that's like, there's a little bit, it's almost like you're simulating procrastinating, but you're really getting things done, right? Is that kind of what you're doing?
Procrastination is such a big part of the creative process.
Yeah, and so that's another P word, procrastination. But here's the thing about procrastination. If procrastination is prescribed over a set amount of time, like you would say.
Over a period of time.
Procrastination over a period of time. When we started talking about this, Justin said, I really like putting on my schedule. I'm going to come into the studio for 2 hours on this day to putter. It means I don't know what I'm going to do when I get there. And it doesn't matter, but I will be there to putter.
Okay.
Yeah. And that leaves, it's procrastination time, essentially. But it's scheduled procrastination time. And I think that schedule is really important to get all the little nascent ideas in a place that you can look for the pattern. Important to make
Shake
a mess
some
for me.
loose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
shake some things loose. I need to, we have a studio to spread out, but you can spread out in your own mind or in your sketchbook. Like scale is relative. One of the ways in which I do brainstorming and story breaking workshops with big groups of people is I will start with, and this comes to the plan. Let's decide what the genre is of the story. Okay, it's a horror story. Let's decide what are the parts of horror stories that we like. And I just get everyone to put up their hand and we write all the parts that they like with no context and no defense of the idea. Once those are all on a big space, on a board or something that everyone can see, I go, okay, in what order do all of these things happen? Every one of these is going to happen now in the story. Why? Because we like them. And that's the only defense you need in your first
I feel
draft.
like that's how Cabin in the Woods came around.
Right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
consider it from the standpoint of you won't do the hard work if it isn't fun.
Right.
So
Yeah.
your plan better contain a whole bunch of fun things. Nothing about executing a project is fun. It's all labor, and it's very stressful. Executing. Producing, here's a P word for us, producing the parts of that project can be very fun. Draw a big robot, lay out the pages, do all that kind of stuff. But when it gets down to it, there's a whole bunch of work that you won't want to do. And if it's connected to a number of things that on the big picture are fun, they make you excited. You love consuming that. You love seeing that. Make sure that all of your stuff points to that so that when you go, and this speaks to my own shared world project, when I went, it's so hard right now. I stepped back and looked at the big idea and I said, yeah, but
You're holding on to that book launch, that time when you hold the finished book in your hands, when you hand it to somebody for the first time at a convention.
And even farther back than that, I'm back as like 12-year-old Gregory, reading the first sword and sorcery story that I had ever read and just feeling how fun that was. And that me, as a young reader, didn't know how any of those little pieces fit together. And any part of a book I found confusing, I just let be confusing and moved on to the parts I liked. And I just, you let it all go when you look back at the plan. My plan is to write something people will enjoy. When you're consuming something you enjoy, you don't understand the intricacy of every part. So, right?
It's the magic of a plan. You don't have to.
You don't have to. That's
Yeah.
the magic of a plan. Projects, though, now it's Cassie and Tong.
Okay.
Now it's a book.
So now it's a book. So
What-
now it has how many pages, what size,
Function, yeah.
how much writing versus illustration. Where are we going to print this? Once it's printed, where is it going to go?
And even more practically, where are we going to meet to talk about it? How often
Yeah.
are we going to meet to talk about it? How are we going to show progress? How are we going to hold each other accountable to the progress we've set related to the project that is part of our plan?
So now we're the project is the book. Now we're getting into the parts.
Now that's parts, right?
Yeah.
Meeting, talking about it, writing down those ideas.
Thumbnailing, storyboarding.
Throwing ideas away that then you pick up and go, oh no, it's this. Our favorite story about Cassie, or my favorite story about Cassie and Tonk is, okay, we're going to have one panel that's black. That's the sadness. No, it's not enough sadness. We're going to have one big strip that's black to show her sadness. No, it's not big enough. We're going to have one whole page. I don't know. It seems like a waste of territory. We're going to have one whole page that's just black to show
What
the
about
sadness.
a double page spread? Can we do that? I think we can do that. We're allowed to do that, right?
We can do whatever we want.
It's our book.
Yeah, what's the plan? The plan is to, and this we came back around.
Yeah.
The plan is to make people feel something. What is the way to make people feel something in this moment? Well, the part that executes that plan was, right, to make it a 2-page spread of total darkness. And then when little kids are opening the book, it's like a big wide format. It envelops them because so often I've heard the story of people with their kids sitting on the floor, their stomach on the floor, reading the book, flipping the pages, and so that sad part fills their entire field of vision, right? And it's affecting, and that's delightful.
Yeah.
But working that out wasn't actually that fun. It was interesting, and it was a problem to solve, but that's what it was. It was a problem we had to solve, and it could have been very easy to get discouraged by the fact that we didn't agree and we couldn't quite come around to it, and we kept coming around, and this is a problem. Why don't we just cut that whole thing out? These are all part of what happens when you're getting down into the little details.
Captain! Oh dear, I never shaved him this close before.
why this is important to kind of recognize that these are different things, the plans, the projects, the parts. Why this is really important for me, the putter, is it's really easy to become overwhelmed when you're doing a couple projects at the same time, right? Like I've got 1, 2, 3 books on the go and a couple other projects, and when the parts are all kind of rattling around in my head, like it seems really overwhelming, like it's too much. So in my sketchbook, I will break these up. So here's this project, and here are all the parts that go with that. Here's this other one, here's their parts, and that helps with that overwhelming feeling. And then the other thing, which I think kind of helped you with your book project, is, okay, today we're just going to work on this one part. We're not going to worry about the whole plan. We're not going to worry about that whole project. But today I'm drawing a train, and I'm just going to draw the train. I don't need to worry about the story beats that come before it or after it. I don't have to worry about that overall book and the Kickstarter that goes with it and the book launch and all that stuff. Don't have to think about that today. Just the train.
Now, why this is on my mind, for the same reason, is that I have a number of big projects. Imagine, if you will, dear listener.
A bunch of angry squirrels.
Yeah, no, the squirrels are gone. Now we have a different metaphor. I am adrift in an angry sea, and the thing that is keeping me afloat are these projects that I have, and there's a number of books, and I'm clinging to those book projects and comics projects, and they're keeping me afloat, and there I sail on that angry sea, and I'm going under. It's like, it's so much. And then a helicopter in the spotlight, and oh, is it rescue? Is it rescue? No, it's another person, and they throw a television script at me, and it's big and it's important, and now I'm sinking, right? And so there's just too much to do all of it. And so in order to navigate my days, I've been setting, for the last 4 days, I've been setting 30 to 40 minute timers on my phone, and I do sprints within this, and I didn't call it puttering, but it was sort of like playing around. I would just take a rest, but I realized I was puttering. And I would have 30 minutes of puttering. I'd have 30 minutes of planning. I'd have 30 minutes of actual project work, 30 minutes of parts work, and they would all be on different projects. So that if I was, for example, on the script, there are a number of like citations you'd have to put in a essay, right? It's dates, times, people, they have to be accurate. You're not making that stuff up on this project. And it's like, it kind of sucks. It's just busy, careful work. I don't like doing that for long stretches. 30, 40 minutes, I can be completely focused to make sure those details are where they are. Then the timer goes, great. Now I'm just going to doodle whatever I want for a half an hour. Okay, that timer goes off. Okay, back to the plan stage of writing the scenes of that script project, get back into the big picture. Timer goes off. Okay, I'm going to go back.
When I try to do this, I get too into what I'm doing, and when that timer goes off, I hit snooze and then snooze again. Snooze again.
I've been really careful not to do that. And what really has helped is I have a number of people, and I literally did this at my desk at home. I wrote their names on a piece of paper, and I put them on the desk. So when the timer, which I actually put my phone on that piece of paper with those people's names, so it's like Jonathan and Justin and Miles, and like the people who, if I hit snooze, that's who I'm letting down, right? I had to get in the way of my own predilections and just say, no snoozing. Now I'm going to help Miles on this project, okay? No snoozing. Now I'm going to help myself on this project. No snoozing. I'm going to help Jonathan on this project. No snoozing. And the days just flew by. And at the end of them, I felt like I hadn't accomplished a single thing because I couldn't remember what you're talking about, that sustained feeling. And then when I looked back at the body of work, I was like, oh, shit, man, I've done so much. Okay, this is good. I can actually take a rest. Mm-hmm. And I took the evening off and went on a date with my wife, and then everything was great, and it was really nice, and all the productivity that I needed to have done to feel the space to rest was available. And I think for the very first time I understood a quote that I have used as the intro to a project before, but it says, those who seek rest find boredom, and those who seek labor find rest. Completely understood it in that moment. It's like by really digging down and not letting the people down where all the anxiety would come from is like dropping the ball for those other people. It meant that I knew I had done everything I possibly could have done. I didn't waste any time. In fact, I even planned my puttering. My procrastination was also included in that, but it didn't run away with me. And putting a limiter on your phone apps is a really great way to do that, but I found that the timer did the same thing.
Yeah.
I didn't waste any time on social media or scrolling because the timer would go off.
Well, here's what I would say, and the thing I like about that idea is that a timer goes off regardless, and you might be in the middle of a thought, the middle of a sentence, whatever you're doing, but you're like probably on a creative high, like you're in the middle of something. So all you have to do is remember where you are, and then shift to something else. Whereas if you hit snooze and keep writing until you run out of steam, and then you're like, okay, I'm done with this now. Then when you come back to that later, you're going to be like, well, now I don't know where to start. And you have so much more hard time getting going again. Whereas if you stop in the middle, you can pick it up right where you left off and continue on to that high.
Yeah. Now, the other thing I'm experimenting with as far as workflowing goes at this like critical juncture where like time is of the essence is I made my desktops. I don't know if I'm using the right word, but basically I can toggle between screens that have the appropriate tabs for that project open.
Oh, yeah.
And then I can switch.
Okay, stop doing that.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I can't. Dear listener.
I let it go for a little bit, but you had to, like, you just keep doing it. So.
He's talking about this, dear listener.
The punctuating.
The punctuating.
But he's using this whole, you've never done that before. I've never seen you do that.
Look at it's all the different ideas. Each one is a finger spread out. The notion is, okay, I have the screenplay to work on. Just that screen with all the relevant information, links, and websites and research data is there. Okay, I'm working on this drawing. Flip that screen up. Just that stuff is there, the references and the things. My novel is up. Flip that screen up, and only those things are there. And it really, lately, I don't know if this will become a habit. This is just I'm just practicing, playing with this idea. It's allowed me to partition the thought process. Like, okay, now I'm working on this, and everything I need for that is here. And none of those other distractions that are saying, hey, just draw another arm of this monster. It's not there, right? It also, I get up. The other thing I do when that timer happens is I get up from the workspace, go get a glass of water, walk around, even if it's just to stretch, and then sit down again.
Right.
That's the beginning.
That break.
Right.
I've been noticing, like, especially like the last couple of years, the anxiety that usually surrounds a task can be alleviated in a shorter amount of time than you think. Like, so for example, working on a project called Dire Beast right now, and I have this anxiety building up because I haven't worked on the project in a while, and I feel like there's so many things that I need to do for that project.
Think of that list of names of people you're letting down.
Right.
Don't write that one down.
It's an anthology project, so there's a lot of people tied to it. And I know that in my head, this problem is big, and there's so many things that need to be done. But once I sit and put in just even like a solid like hour and a half, 2 hours in that project, all that will be gone. That's all I need to kind of be back on top of that thing. And I think that's the case with like a lot of these projects that you're like, oh, there's so much to do there. There's so much like so many tasks, but
there must be, maybe our dear listeners know, there must be a name for it. The idea of you had an idea, but I'll do that later, and you push it, sort of wipe it in your mind over. That must have a cumulative effect on anxiety.
Putting things off, and then like the longer you put it off, the worse you feel about it. So therefore, you don't want to do it. Therefore, you don't do it, and then you put it off.
More
longer.
negative feelings are attached to it.
Yeah, what's the name for that? Do you know? There is a name.
Snake
for it.
eating its own tail. I don't know what it is.
Yes,
it's awful. A vicious cycle is what it is.
Yeah.
And then every time you finally do tackle whatever that is, oh, that wasn't so bad. Why didn't I do this earlier?
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
Every time.
I know. Yeah.
Oh, you're like leaning on your hand.
I know. I felt this. I have totally felt this because this is Meat House for me. This is what I feel like for Meat House.
Oh.
See,
sure.
all you need is that hour and a
I know.
half,
I really
and
just
you'll
need to spend a couple hours just doing it, and then I'll be probably in a good space.
But see, it's not even a couple hours. I swear, it's like
20 minutes.
An hour to 2 hours. That's it, and then you feel like you're back in it again.
Well, that's a couple hours for me.
What if for Meat House, before you leave here, you write 5 sentences of a new scene before you're allowed to leave this room?
I don't want to do it here.
Yeah, but I don't like what you want
All right,
is
fine, fine.
irrelevant.
Yeah, I
What
can
you've
do that.
chosen is at hand.
Fine.
And that's I think about that all the time. What you want is irrelevant, and what you've chosen is at hand.
Yeah.
Come on. But where are we going?
To Neverland.
Neverland.
You'll never grow up there.
Oh, Peter, it would be so wonderful. But wait, what would Mother say?
Mother? What's Mother?
Even as I'm saying this, I know I'm not going to do this advice on a couple of there's a couple of things I need to take some time and put some time into, and I don't think I'm
Oh.
gonna do that today. But
Yeah, if anything,
I want to take my own advice.
If anything, dear listener, we're laying out optimal conditions. We don't.
To make it seem like we know what we're doing.
Yeah, we don't carry these out in this perfect order every time.
No.
By no means. What we've been doing is we've been talking about off the air the ways in which we are accomplishing things and the ways in which things are accomplished properly, and we're sharing that. But that's not because this is our constant mode. Untrue.
Which I don't like. Sometimes you do get into that optimal mode. You're very productive. Everything's getting checked off. You're tackling things, but I don't think you can maintain that forever, right?
No.
Like it's part of human nature. You can't be optimal and on top of things forever. After a couple months, a couple weeks, you start to slip. Things start to build up. You go into that procrastination mode again, and then
let's be real. Most of the problems of society are all made up. Like we've created all these ridiculous things to be stressed about, and so you can't be optimal in an imaginary.
It's because we don't have
structure.
predators anymore. There's nothing to run away from with teeth and claws, so we have to make up our own anxieties.
Dear listener, if you're currently running in the woods from a predator with
While
teeth
listening
and
to a
claws while
podcast.
listening to a podcast, I want to really say that I appreciate your ability to multitask, but turn us off and just climb a tree, all right? But you're right. Yeah, you can build up so much anxiety about not having done something.
Yeah.
This is how humans are built. We're supposed to be anxious. That's what we're.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
But anytime
Because you're supposed to be on top of it. You're supposed to be aware and cautious, and where are the bears? Where are the lions? Like, it's how we were built. So
so
now
if
we
we
don't
don't
have
do
those.
it-
We still have that anxiety of everything's wrong. I'm scared.
But for me, no, I completely agree with everything you just said, but I'm just in my own practice. One of the places where I find the most solace is the place where actual predators might be. I go out into the woods, right? And I find myself completely relaxed in the woods.
There you go.
Perhaps when I reflect on this conversation, I'll be less relaxed wondering about which predators are lurking out there where I should be more alert. But a lifetime of watching post-apocalypse movies tells me the thing that you have to fear is people.
Yeah.
Right? So that's
Man
why
is the
maybe the
greatest
woods.
predator, yeah.
Maybe that's why the woods.
I've always liked that scientific explanation as to why people like scary movies. It's your brain trying to get better at handling being scared. Like your brain wants you to be scared so it knows how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. That's why we have nightmares. That's a lot of the brain research about nightmares. Is you have a nightmare so that your brain can run all the impossible ways. It's like doing like lifting weights. You're lifting the heavy thing until you get stronger. All these impossible things let you manage that anxiety. So the possible thing that you have to face is less frightening.
Yeah. So that's like the rating scale, right? You get used to PG-13s, then you move up to rated R, and then
Now there's a parallel and competing mode of thinking that desensitization to violence is not healthy.
Yeah.
So, whichever side of that spectrum you're putting yourself on.
I will say that when I do the 31 Days of Horror and watch one every day for a month, it does affect me.
Takes an emotional
It does,
toll.
I am kind of low and kind of
yeah.
depressed for a while. I do feel that way just because it's so much of that content. So it can be much, but it's so much fun. It's just,
You doing it again this year?
of course.
Yeah.
And for me, obviously, it's not being actually scared. I don't feel like I'm actually every once in a while there's one that will actually scare me, but for the most part you're admiring the craft of it and the story of how the movie was made and this fun little line or this thing that happens. So that's the kind of stuff I like. I'm not
Especially
really
if
being
you're super
scared,
saturating like that, right?
but it's a lot of imagery, a lot of violent and disturbing imagery in a short period of time. So yeah.
So I'm also reading. I wish I could remember the name of the book. I read a lot of nonfiction at the same time, and I call them sipping books. So I just pull them off, I read a little section, and I put it back and whatever. And so one of them is about how at the same time that the satanic panic was going on, and Gaines and the censorship movement in comics, like stop all these crime comics, stop all the horror comics,
70s kind of thing,
just before the Comics Code Authority was created. It's about all the declassified CIA and government documents related to how much funding the U.S. government was giving comics publishers during the different war eras. So World War II and the Korean War and Vietnam War, and the direct correlation that the funding of telling publishers, we'll give you a bunch of money to publish your comics, just make sure these enemies are present.
Yeah.
Right? And they believed a direct correlation between recruitment to the military and these efforts in programming children who to hate.
Yep.
So when all that funding was pulled and publishers needed big wins, they started turning to horror and crime, and those were their big wins. The population showed up and consumed that content. And one of the fears that was not in the publicized trials was the private proceedings that showed this data to those committees and said, we programmed an entire generation of Americans to do this behavior using comic books without any guidance. We're now maybe programming Americans to love crime and admire criminals and think the gangster life is a good idea. And, these other comics, these horror comics, are a step beyond that. What if they have the same effect? We've got to put a stop to this.
Yeah.
And that was a bunch of the private fueling of this idea. I think of it as, because I have a son with an allergy, I think of it like that. Everyone at school shouldn't bring a peanut butter sandwich because one kid might die from the peanut butter. That's reasonable, right? The allergy, it's reasonable. I think, this is my soapbox now creaking, I think that the people who respond to violent video games and movies and things like that is about that same ratio. It's almost like an allergy. There are people who are triggered by watching too many horror movies or playing too many violent video games. It's a very small percentage.
Yeah. And it's also in addition to other things. Like,
Right.
if they're going to act on those things, there's probably a lot of other things going on with that person. It's not just the movie or the video game that made them that way.
The question becomes, is there a public responsibility then, the same way that we'll send a letter home and say, hey, don't bring peanut butter sandwiches to school, there's 3 kids who could die. Is there a public responsibility to withhold the dangerous media? I'm not saying I have an answer. I'm just putting that question out there.
It's interesting. And it's funny, if you want an example of what you're talking about, that wartime content, there's the old Batman serials on Tubi. I believe there's 2.
The old black and white ones?
Yeah.
Where you had the big floppy ears?
Yeah.
What?
It's so silly. And so they're like about 3.5 hours each. There's 2 of them, Batman and then Batman and Robin. And they were like the short serials, like 15 or 20 minute episodes that you would go every Saturday to watch. And
in the movie theater.
Yeah, you would watch before TV
yeah.
was a thing. This is it's kind of the precursor to Saturday morning cartoons in a way.
Serials. Oh man, I love serials.
So, but you watch those, and it's apparent very quickly that it's like the first one is just called Batman, and it really the only character in there that is like it's Batman and Robin, and that's it. There's no Commissioner Gordon. There might be Alfred, and there's no other characters from the comic books. And the enemy is a Japanese person, and it's very, very horribly racist against Japanese people. Like, and I'm sitting there going, this is for kids. Mm-hmm. And they would have come out of the theater just thinking horrible things about Japanese people.
And believing it's okay to think those
yes,
things.
And believing because this movie is
thing.
telling them. So that is kind of the effect that has on them. Now, as far as it's like a different kind of content than the video games, the violent video games. It's a different thing. It's like the message of the movie is that this Japanese person is a bad person or that they are bad in general. That's not the message of violent video games necessarily.
Yeah, right. But propaganda works. We have
it's awful.
Right?
Yeah.
Propaganda works. And why it works is related to the study of the field called semiotics. And it's big. And if I'm going to be incredibly reductive of it, it's the tendency for people to find meaning in an image they see everywhere. Advertising uses it, propaganda uses it, politicians use it. You just repeat the same thing often enough, and people go, oh, that must be true. It's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And we also create arguably some pretty violent content out of the studio here, and I think to myself, once in a while, am I contributing to the problem, or am I just? And when I think back of 10-year-old Gregory, 12-year-old Gregory reading those early pulps, they're horribly racist.
Yeah.
They're awful. And I often found myself, the parts I didn't understand were usually tied up in that, because my mother worked pretty regularly against that line of thinking, and worked to mitigate that content, and would read, like I'd pick up an old book from a garage sale, I'd read it, I'd catch her reading it also and say like, oh, I didn't know you liked X. And she'd go, oh yeah, well, I'm just interested. And I knew that was her saying like, what is it in this content that I should address? And when I'm thinking back as a parent, the number of times that I believe my mom was just at dinner discussing these lofty ideas, now when I trace it back in my mind, oh, it's because the H.P. Lovecraft story that she picked up off the table that I was reading and read had all of these super racist undertones because of the era it was written in, and she's addressing them from a modern perspective and saying, do you understand what's changed and how these things have changed, and here's the world that we're living in now and all of that. And of course I did, because that's how I was raised. Maybe I didn't. I want to believe that I was exposed to the right perspective. We all have a lot to learn, I'm sure, but if I didn't have that, and she was like, yeah, oh, I love those books. Aren't they great?
Yeah.
That's all she said.
Yeah.
There would be a problem raised by that. So how do we get onto this deep
Yeah,
topic?
I
I
don't
thought we
know.
were talking about something light.
I don't know, but it's an interesting conversation, and it's certainly, society changes. We become more used to these kinds of things, and it's very, very different now than it was in the 40s when those Batman
An interesting to
serials
think,
came
right?
out.
Like every time you look back 10, 15, 20 years, like I can't believe people thought that way, did things that way. Like what are we doing right now?
Well, and
Right.
once you have a body of work, you can look back into your early work and go,
Belongs to the Algonquin group. Quite savage, you know.
Let's go get him.
Come on, we'll get him. Gentlemen! First, we must plan our strategy.
What strategy?
A plan of attack.
So going back to the whole racist thing, I think this is an interesting thing to talk about. Like, it was at the time accepted because it was like, more people thought that way, but does it take away from the value of the work or the story because it is that way?
yes.
Okay.
It takes away from its value, I think.
Yeah, but as long as you're aware of what it is and the context of
Yeah,
it,
it
it's
doesn't
okay.
take away from its meaning or its importance. And this is why I make this distinction. Midnight City, graphic novel series of mine, and I'm working on a number of game-related things related to Midnight City. There is a lot of value in the public domain characters from the pulps. The things that take away from the value are the racism, are the anti-Semitism, is the yellow scare, is all that. That takes away from its value. I don't need to bring any of that forward. So when I'm addressed, and I've addressed this in a number of public panels, when people say like, you like the pulp, say,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like a leading question. And I say, well, my job is sort of to take everything that's good and leave the racism and the classism behind.
Yeah.
And I don't always achieve it. I do my best because some of the characters, it's so ingrained. And so I try to cast them in as anti-heroes or as, morally gray rather than the hero as a result of the context that the character is created in. It's a challenge. There's value in those ideas and those stories. For example, Phantom Detective. There's value in the idea of a person being outside of a crime that they see as morally reprehensible and deciding that even though it's none of their business in that it didn't hurt them directly, there's a role to be played in changing the outcome for the victim. That's a good idea. Being super wealthy and believing you know everything about a class of people, so you put on a mask, pick up a gun, and go shoot everyone you think is bad, we can leave that part behind.
Yeah.
That has no value.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's how I separate those two
Yeah,
things.
and that
when I
makes
move
sense.
forward.
Absolutely. But I remember, I just remember being a kid and kind of being aware that things were more racist in the past, and that we were coming a long way, and that things were still racist, things were still bad. But when I read those things, I always kind of had that in my head, like, oh yeah, that's not good, and I just kind of thought of it that way.
And there is a danger in reading that old, like that pulp stuff and going, oh, look how far we've come.
Yeah.
Patting yourself on the back. There's so far to go. We were watching Guilty Pleasure in the household. We watched, my wife Tara said, hey, the kids are old enough. I've got an idea for a family movie we can watch. And usually our family movie experiences are more the Studio Ghibli variety of the spectrum. She goes, let's watch Tombstone. We're all sitting. We don't know what movie it's going to be. And we just, we trust her judgment. And she puts on Tombstone, Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer.
Great film.
Right? Great film. But one detail stood out to me. Above all the others, there are some problems in that film. But the one thing that stood out to me of this legend. There is a scene where the family, the Earp family, is in the street and they're talking about how things are going to be different. It's going to be different here. Things are going to be different here. And passing behind them, shout out to whoever the production designer is a big wagon with the suffragette movement and a whole bunch of people saying votes for women. The sign on the wagon says equal pay for equal work, regardless of sex. And as that scroll rolls past them from the, silver mine town of Tombstone, Arizona, everyone in the family says like, well, I guess we're still working on that part.
Well, they got the vote.
Right? But you see what I mean? Like, you can congratulate yourself on how far you've come because we're not in the street shooting criminals with a 6-gun.
Yeah.
But then this other fundamental big idea, not solved, barely addressed in that 200 years.
Yeah, for sure. It's tough.
Right? So, you take your wins where you can find them, I suppose.
What are your current plans? Not projects, not parts. What are your plans right now, Gregory?
What are my plans? Big plans? Like over the few years or like over a few months?
Give me
this summer.
Let's give me one. Give me one big plan that you haven't really started even into the project or parts part of it yet.
Big plan?
A plan.
I am going to produce and direct a feature-length silent film called The Chalice.
Wow.
That's a plan.
That's a plan.
Cool.
Yeah.
Like, do you have a time frame, or is it just like the plan? You don't put that in there. That's not a
So-
keyword. Period. We said that period.
What's interesting about this to me in the context of this conversation, because I haven't had this, I've never said it out loud.
You just said it out
I
loud.
just said it out loud in that way. I've been talking to people about what I might do and whatever. I haven't talked about it as a plan, more like a process. I've been working on this project starting on the list of parts I would need. Films, oh man, they require so many parts to execute. And there are certain things that I want done a very specific way, or I'm not going to even start. And I'm not usually like that. Usually I'm a big plan, and I'll figure out the little details as we go, and certain things will be good enough. But there are certain parts of this plan that I need to be a certain way. One of them is music, and so Love You to Death is the secret incubator for this entire plan. It forces me to watch, dozens, now up to hundreds of silent films and their pieces to see how they're assembled, re-editing old black and white footage to these short, punchy moments, but still have that feeling of the old black and white film, syncing it to music, having it absent the dialogue, but still have all that stuff in Love You to Death is me practicing to see if any of the things I think I might be able to pull off in the plan are even in my reach as a person. Mm-hmm. You can imagine yourself as a filmmaker, and then when you try to make a film, you realize very quickly you aren't. And I've been standing beside people in the moment where they realized they weren't, and they still had the whole project to finish.
But even just all that you just laid out there, I think that's a very healthy place that the stuff that you're planning, there's a lot of unknowns. If all your plans, you know exactly how you're getting from A to B to C to D, then I think you're maybe playing it a bit too safe. But I think your plans need to really test you.
Yeah, I think there is a real danger in people believing their plan won't change once they start.
If it doesn't, then you're stagnating.
Yeah,
maybe
the old expression is no plan survives contact with the enemy, and in this case, enemy is time and budget and people and all the things that get in the way. And so if you think you know exactly how it's going to go, that's the enemy of progress, honestly, I think. And so what I've been doing, because of my past association with a playwright and production manager, Andreas Sartison, I've realized how important having the right people who have the right capacity, just even to know them and be able to call them for advice. So I've been kind of gathering things for the plan. The weather of the plan is sort of forming. It's not even a cloud yet. It'll all come down to the script. One of the parts I have to accomplish is to take my outline and the script elements that I have and turn them into an actual functional shooting script. Until that happens, I can't even engage any other individual in the process of the plan because I don't know what I'm asking of them. But once the script is there, you can say, well, I'm going to need this many days in this place. I'm going to need this many people in this, So movies are anything on film, frankly. The process of the plan and the parts, they kind of accrue at the same time, And low-budget stuff in particular like this, do you have the location? Will you always have that location? Okay, that's a part. That part forms the plan, right?
Right. You have that location on this date for X amount of time. Well, now you need to get your actors and actresses for that amount of time. You need to get the equipment for that time.
Yeah.
Blah, blah. Like, it all needs to now line up with that opportunity.
Yeah, and I saw a really great little clip of an interview with Key and Peele talking about how when they were working on their show, they never had enough budget, they never had enough time. And so if the script said a huge theater and what they had was a school auditorium, rather than go, ugh, oh my gosh, what are we going to do now? They would say they had a mental structure, a way of framing the writing process of how does being in a school auditorium improve our idea? And we're only going to move forward with the idea that this is an improvement, even though it was a restriction, right? They would say, okay, how does it make it better? How does it make it funnier? How does it make it faster? How does it make it all of these other things? And so in planning a project like this, as I'm acquiring like what I want and then what I can get, I just keep saying to myself, okay, well, this is going to make it better. This is going to make it better. And I'm not letting myself in the planning stage be discouraged by how much things actually cost and how much time it actually takes. And the more I'm on sets and the more we're doing productions, the more I realize, okay, narrowing the focus and letting that stuff go is very important. And
Another good P word, you need to be able to pivot.
Ooh.
Very, pivotable. In fact, it's funny you bring that up because recently in this script process, when I was talking to the story editor, I said, okay, I'm almost finished. I'm going to send it to you. They said, well, you don't have to finish before you send it to me. Send me a pivotable draft, a draft that has everything in it that you know is important. And if I need to pivot and move the pieces around to make the
Something a little malleable.
more malleable. Send me a pivotable draft, and then you won't be upset when all the notes come in. It won't freak you out.
Yeah.
So that was really good.
Nice.
So
Cool.
This episode of Super Pulp Science has been brought to you by the letter P.
you've got to pick. You've got to pick a Sesame Street episode.
Jeez, I could find one that was brought to you. I'm sure there was several that were brought to you by the letter P.
That is what you have to use for our soundbite. Dear listener,
10,000
wherever you
episodes of
are
Sesame Street.
in your creative process, whether you're in the planning stage, the project stage, the puttering stage, playing, patterns, parts, as long as you peed on it a little bit, we at Super Pulp Science believe that it's possible. And we encourage
It has
you.
potential.
Yeah. And this is GMP Kamichuk encouraging you to join the fight and make comments.